The Office of Personnel Management has issued its highly anticipated guidance instructing federal agencies on how to handle President Trump's recent directive requiring federal employees to return to in-office work. Let's dig into it. Hello, everyone. Ian Smith here with fedsmith.com. Thanks for joining me today. If you're new to the channel or new to FedSmith, we're an online news service dedicated to helping current and former federal employees with information that's important to your retirement or to your careers. We cover topics like pay, benefits, retirement, the thrift savings plan, and more recently, all of these executive orders and information coming out of Washington. What I wanted to talk to you about today is guidance from the Office of Personnel Management on how to handle President Trump's recent memorandum requiring federal employees to return to in-office work. Just to catch you up on this, the day he took office, President Trump issued a whole bunch of executive orders, and some of these had a direct impact on federal employees. I did another video covering those in general. I'll put a link to that in the description. But this one in particular, it was a memorandum requiring an end to remote work for federal employees. It didn't have a lot of details or information in it. We were assuming that the Office of Personnel Management would be issuing guidance to federal agencies on how to implement this memo. That has happened. The guidance was issued late Wednesday, January 22nd. Now, by way of background, it says in the guidance that federal offices were, quote, virtually abandoned, and also, quote, the vast majority of federal office workers have not returned to in-person work, even though the COVID-19 pandemic ended years ago. Consequently, it therefore concludes, quote, the PM, which is presidential memorandum issued by President Trump, reflects a simple reality. The only way to get employees back to the office is to adopt a centralized policy requiring return to work for all agencies across the federal government. Seeking to cajole individual agencies to try to get employees to return to the work site has not succeeded. Now, just in case it wasn't obvious, that part about cajoling individual agencies was a shot at the Biden administration and its telework policies. As you may recall, under the Biden administration, President Biden at one point towards the end of the pandemic, or I guess even after he declared an end to the pandemic, he said that federal employees would be returning to in-office work. But the approach the Biden administration took was it left it up to each individual agency as to how that would happen for the most part. The OPM memo also states, quote, President Biden's attempts to convince individual agencies to have employees return to work failed to achieve a meaningful return to office work. So that's the reasoning as to why this directive has been issued by President Trump and the Trump administration. Here's the more important part, though. In order to comply with this new directive, OPM is directing federal agencies to do the following things by Friday, January 24th, 2025 at 5 p.m. Eastern. I'm recording this on January 23rd, so that is tomorrow, coming up fast at the end of the week. It says federal agencies are to revise their telework policies to state that federal employees must work at their respective duty stations unless excused due to a disability, qualifying medical condition, or other compelling reason certified by the agency head and the employee's supervisor. So there will be allowances for reasonable accommodations, in other words. Number 2, agencies are to email employees to notify them of President Trump's return to in-person work memo and the agency's intent to comply with it. Number 3, the agency should notify OPM of the agency's telework managing officer and assign that individual responsibility for complying with the guidance. Now, additionally, the memo adds the following information. For employees whose official duty station is more than 50 miles from any existing agency office, the agency should take steps to move the employee's duty station to the most appropriate agency office based on the employee's duties and job function. Also, agencies should advise OPM of when the agency will be in full compliance with the presidential memo. For this, OPM recommends a target date of 30 days for full compliance. And the guidance also notes that this is subject to any collective bargaining obligations or exclusions granted by the agency. Now, to be honest, I was hoping for more detail in all of this, particularly with respect to the collective bargaining agreements, since unions were working with their agencies to secure those before President Trump took office. The law states that agencies are required to bargain with unions on that, and if the collective bargaining agreements have allowances for telework, that has to be taken into consideration. It sounds like they will be. It mentions it in this guidance, but there's just not a lot of detail. It's possible that this guidance to agencies is a first step towards enforcing the directive, and so it may be more of an information gathering process than anything else, since they're telling agencies to advise OPM of when the agency will be in full compliance, for instance. That's the extent of the memo, and that's what we know right now. Like I said, it's not a lot of information. I've posted an article, though, on fedsmith.com that goes into a little more detail about this. And we also have other articles on there that go into much more detail about the executive orders that have been issued. I also published an article about President Trump's memorandum directing an end to remote work for federal employees. We'll be sharing more information as it becomes available, so be sure to stay with FedSmith for more updates as they happen.